of the earlier experience. Then another great man, seemingly a great man, goes to Luero, fights for about 5 years with the assumption that he's going to overturn the crumbling. Up to now, Professor Lumumba, Uganda is at the crossroads. There are many questions unanswered, including the question of devolution of powers, sharing of powers between the regions and the center, which has long been characterized by Uganda's existence. What do you have to say about my comment?
Okay, thank you. There's a hand over there. Let's just finish with that table and then we move. And let's just make it snappy so that we give Professor time to respond and then we move to the next agenda.
Thank you so much, moderator. My name is Ambrose Byamcha, and I normally follow professors' presentations. But in Uganda, professor, if you stand in my village, you may lose the election. There is a lot of manipulation. The constitution is very clear. How do we solve manipulation? I am very sure, Professor, if you stand in any constituency in Uganda, you are likely to lose the election. And what you are saying is true. I'm not saying that you are saying wrong things, but how do we avoid manipulation in the face of the constitution?
Thank you. Just pass the mic to your colleague. Okay, okay, so before we proceed, Professor has requested to first respond, and then we'll take another round. Yeah, sure.
Let me answer the last question first. There is a book that I commend to you. It's written by Arthur Koestler, Darkness at Noon. And one of the things that he says, that in times of political immaturity of the masses, you do not appeal to their higher judgment. You either take power by a coup d'etat or remain silent. But we don't want that avenue of a coup d'etat. That's why civic education is the avenue. It takes a little longer, but we believe that if you work at it sufficiently, then you can actually animate the masses sufficiently to take charge of their affairs. And if you ever doubted that that can happen, the recent events in Sri Lanka, where the president was literally kicked out by the people in the streets, and the recent events in Bangladesh, tells you that it can actually be achieved. So my own view is that, of course, as we speak now, it is what we have in many African countries, not just Uganda. Kenya is perhaps worse because it is ethnic affiliation and corruption. So when you are in such an environment, you've got to work at it. And sometimes I think that we are very impatient. The life of a nation cannot be defined in 60 years. That is the reality. If you look at other nations, it has taken centuries. So if you want things to be fulfilled in your lifetime, you will be disappointed. I'm no longer in that space. I now hold the view that mine is to make my contribution. And once you've made your contribution, then ultimately something will happen. The second question, which is about, my good friend says that Uganda is at crossroads. Show me a country that is not at crossroads. Show me. All countries, all polities are at crossroads, but of a different kind. If you listen to the debates that are going on now in the United States of America, the Americans think that America is at crossroads. The Germans think that they are at crossroads. I was listening to a debate just this morning. They think they are at crossroads. The British post-Brexit think they are at crossroads. In Spain now, they think they are at crossroads. In India, they think that they are at crossroads because of the Modi administration and the question of Hindus. So every nation at all times will always be at some kind of crossroad. The question is, how do you deal with your crossroad? If we continue with our marriage analogy, every marriage for those who are married is troubled. You see people coming to church holding hands. You think that this is a marriage made in heaven. But if they were to tell you the things that are happening behind the holding of hands, you would be shocked. You would go back to your own marriage. So I hold the view that we've got to grapple with those realities, and that is why I believe that ideas, ultimately political parties must have ideas. What we have, in Kenya, for example, you have vehicles for elections. In some you have 200 political. What does your political party stand for? On matters of education, on matters of health. And African political parties have not matured, in my view. The political parties after independence had some clarity in terms of how they wanted to run the nations. Of the surviving political parties to mean that those which are still in power, CCM can say that it's a party. CCM in Tanzania can claim that it's a party. Frelimo was beginning to be a party. MPLA in Angola is struggling to be a party. ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe was beginning to be a party, but I see that they are now on the wrong. NRA, NRM is struggling to be a party, but it must jettison the freedom-fighting credentials in order to let the capsule move into a political party domain. So that, in my view, is the kind of problem that we must continue with, and it is our duty to mediate this in a very specific way, and each country has their own history, which is unique, so that even when we talk democracy, Nyerere told the Americans and the Europeans at one time that this Coca-Colaization of democracy is a problem. You cannot sit in London, Paris, and Washington and tell us this is how you must behave. No. You've got to have a Uganda that recognizes the Kabaka. How do you deal with it? And you are still a democracy that accept the Emori Mori, that accept the Bunyoro Kitara, the Toro. How do you ensure that they exist in an environment and yet you talk about democracy in that sense? If you ask the king of Eswatini, he'll say he's democratic. If you ask the king of Lesotho, he'll say he's democratic. So we also must ensure that we run away from this gridlock of definitions. But there is one bright definition that I think was given on an enlightened moment by Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address when he said, democracy is a government for the people and by the people. I think the people element must never be eliminated. Lastly, the question, there is always the attempt in Africa to romanticize Africa through sometimes history which is apocryphal, and to look at Africa as if it were one. Africa is not one. Whenever somebody tells me there was civilization of Africa, was it Yoruba? Was it Igbo? Was it Wolof? Was it Ovambo? Was it of Mbundu? Africa has over 6,000 polities. The Dogon in Mali, the government governed themselves very differently from the Yoruba. And while I agree that there was interaction of civilizations, which Anta Chek Diop talks about, it is important to remind ourselves that when we talk about decolonization, I'm not just talking about decolonization, I'm talking about decoloniality. They are two distinct words. Decolonization is the act of merely jettisoning the physical infrastructure of decolonization. Decoloniality is emptying our minds. Ngugi wa Thiong'o talks about it. So we are now in the face of decoloniality. And there is a book that I commend to you, is written by Nana Kobinan Ketsia V. He himself is a Western political scientist and a professor formerly of Western Cape University, and now a traditional ruler in Ghana. And he talks about governance, the Ghanaian paradigm. And I want to conclude. I have no answer for what I'm suggesting, but I'm saying that Africa must reinterrogate governance. And is in our reinterrogation of governance that we'll get something that is closest to our African situation in its very many nuanced forms. And lastly, about elections. I think we have a problem with elections. And I think that elections are part of our problem. I'm in a number of Ugandan forums and a number of African forums, and it pains me to no end when I see a young person putting a poster to be a member of parliament in Uganda in 2026. I see a young person or an old person in Kenya talking about elections in 2027. In African countries, you stop an election today and you begin campaigning for the next. There is never a time to think about the nation. In China, when I watch the Chinese sitting, the Politburo, the Chinese, you know what they are doing? And I saw last time, they are thinking of how they will relate to China politically, economically, 100 years from when they were sitting. No wonder you find them. Yesterday we were in a Chinese restaurant. I was not in a Buganda restaurant. I was in a Chinese restaurant in Kampala. When I go to Nairobi, I'm in an Indian restaurant. They are thinking beyond elections. You and me, courtesy of our Western education, courtesy of our colonization of our minds, we were so thoroughly indoctrinated that even when we are doing the wrong thing, we do not know. We need prayer and fasting, which we are now become experts at, praying and fasting in the hope that things will happen. But it is decolonization and decoloniality. And once we do that, and I hope that this Katiba will help us. I could go on and on.
Thank you very much, Professor. So in the interest of time, we have decided that we'll get the questions later, please. So just take notes, just take notes of you.
At least.
Time. You will have the time, yeah? You will have the time, please. So, of course, we are now moving into the panel presentations. And like I said earlier, the Honorable Norbert Mao will be talking about electoral reforms and the issue of campaign financing. Of course, Mao is our Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, but he is a seasoned politician. He's also a lawyer. He's a former presidential candidate. That was in 2011. And Mao has also been a member of parliament in the past, that's from 1996 to 2005, where he represented the people of Gulu municipality. He then left parliament and was elected the LC5 chairman for Gulu district, and he's also president of the Democratic Party. Honorable, why am I giving this brief bio? Just so that you understand why, again, we are giving him this question, this theme. It goes beyond the current position he has. We're looking at his career over the years and why we think he is actually a very good person to actually talk about this issue. Honorable, before we actually go into the questions, could you just speak briefly, just for maybe 2-3 minutes, about this theme on electoral reforms and campaign financing before we start bringing up the follow-up questions? I'll give you this microphone.
When I joined the government, I immediately started working on how to make electronic voting compulsory. Remember, this was an order from the Supreme Court. So I took a cabinet paper proposing that we should have full biometric identification. Accusations of vote stuffing, ballot stuffing, is rampant in our elections. So we need a system which will show that the votes that are counted are actually a result of people who showed up at a polling station in person. There should therefore be a mechanism of ascertaining who appeared at a polling station. So through fingerprint and facial recognition technology, we shall ensure that the number of ballots given and the data in the machine actually tally. I hit a snag I have to tell you. Apparently, many people think that the machines will either interfere with the with their agenda, and to his credit, the president was very supportive. He said, we need this to verify who came to the polling station. As I talk now, the cabinet paper and the proposed amendments to the law are still packed. I am pushing to have it put back. We even had more radical proposals to have the presiding officers at the polling stations wear body cameras. Because when you have a body camera, then whatever is happening at the polling station is being recorded. Why is electoral reform critical? Because a credible election leads to a legitimate government. And a government which lacks legitimacy will always be struggling to explain why it is wielding power rather than serving the people. So this is something which citizens have got to join in. And it will take time to build, as they say, a more perfect union. The Americans say it. The other provision that we are proposing, finally, is about the role of security forces during elections. We have had incidents where polling stations have been raided by armed people, and they basically take over. It's the duty of citizens to expose those incidents, but it is better if the Electoral Commission is truly in charge. In my view, and from experience, the Electoral Commission virtually does not have a say on directing the activities of the security forces. This is a mindset problem. We face it in many government institutions, even parliament. When citizens go to parliament, the security forces are asking them what their business is instead of checking them for security threats. I think when I go to meet my MP, it's really none of the business of the police officer. The police officer should only ensure that I'm not carrying a bomb. Then I should meet a civilian who works for parliament to then go into whatever details they need. So I think these are advocacy issues. I hope to hear people like the Center for Constitutional Governance joining in a strong advocacy for electronic voting. The Kenyans were able to verify votes because they had the equipment. They had a verifiable method. We are also proposing that results be declared constituency by constituency. Now, everything goes to the district, and I hear rumors that sometimes boxes are waylaid. But the truth is, if we want to build a safe country, we must accept that results that are declared at a polling station are as legitimate as any result. It's a good thing. I saw the National Broadcasting Services, NBS TV, being harassed for declaring results. But these are results that are being declared. The truth of the matter is, on the books, our elections should have no problems. But it looks like the players all want to win. So we think the issue of electoral reforms should be a citizen's agenda. I want to promise that I will go back to cabinet, and later I will talk about more radical reforms to deal with campaign financing. I think the way to have a cheap election is to go for proportional representation.
Okay.
That is, I will explain a little bit later what that is.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are questions, of course, and a lot of concerns about the commercialization of our politics, which is really hurting the integrity of our electoral processes and also the outcomes and ultimately the individuals who actually end up getting elected because of the deep pockets that they have. And we do know that the government has plans to enact a law to curb the commercialization of politics. I think the ICT minister has talked about it. I don't know if at cabinet level you've had such a conversation and when you're actually thinking of having such a law in place.
The law already is good enough. It actually punishes voter bribery. If it is proved that you have bribed voters, you can be blacklisted for up to 10 years from participating in elections. The other burglar proof against the influence of money is education of citizens. In Kisoro, the candidate who distributed salt and other goodies, you may have seen videos.
Yeah.
Because there was a car with the boot open and her poster was being held by a handler, and they would tell the voters that this is the person to vote and thank you very much, here is some salt. But apparently it was not enough to persuade them. So if voters are educated well, you can actually override money. So there's need for some measure of vigilance. Personally, I think the laws we have are actually very good. There should be no country with a better election than Uganda. Unlike in America where you go and hide in a cardboard box and vote, in Uganda, you actually vote in a basin, everybody is seeing you, and you take the ballots, it is given openly. But somehow votes emerge miraculously. And that's why the electronic system can insulate against that. The other thing is to put a cap. We are proposing to put a cap on expenditures. The money which influences elections, I don't think foreign money is so significant. Despite the complaints of the president about foreign money. But because we already have a law that you cannot receive more than 400 million shillings as a political party. But as a candidate, there is actually no limit. That is a gap that needs to be plugged. So being lawyers, of course, we know how to go around that. So when I was contesting for president in 2011, I registered a company, and that company was the one handling my issues. So even if you're coming after me, I'm not the one. I'm hiding behind the corporate veil. So we hope you people will do more research and advise us. This law is going to be made public to make it difficult to use money. The other thing is concerning fundraisings and donations during an electoral season. Already incumbent members of parliament are living in terror because those who have been leading some of these agencies that we are rationalizing, their next stop is now parliament. And I don't need to be a prophet to tell you that. Because how can a person donate 50 million consistently every week and the state is just observing? Who in this country can donate 50 million shillings personally? Mukwano does not do it. The Mulwana Empire does not do it. Definitely all these rich people, the Sudirs, don't do it. But you find somebody who is a commissioner in a ministry, somebody who works for the Uganda Revenue Authority, somebody who is working in an agency, is keeping our MPs on tenterhooks by being very active in fundraising. And they don't go in person. They just say, so-and-so wishes you well, and he has sent me to give you 50 million shillings. So the law will take care of that so that the votes are not distorted.
Thank you. So earlier when you were speaking, you talked about the fact that there is need for tolerance of political views, regardless of which side you find yourself. There's need for that respect and tolerance for each other. But something that is clear for most Ugandans is people do not have much trust or confidence in the government, and sometimes that shows in the utterances and general behavior. So when you came up with the proposed electoral reforms, there were definitely questions and concerns that some people have, that to what extent were these proposals your own, and to what extent were they being influenced maybe by a higher power in that case? In this case, of course, the reference would be the head of state. I don't know how you'd respond to that.
So perhaps you are one of those who believes that when I was appointed a minister, I underwent a brain transplant.
Not me, certainly. I don't believe that. That's not my position, and I still have a lot of respect and admiration for you, I must say. So.
Well, there are people who believe that I underwent a brain transplant, that at the gate of State House there was a surgeon who removed the brain of Norbert Mao, the old Norbert Mao according to them, and put in a new brain which is programmed to say yes to anything President Museveni and the NRM says. I don't think it is important to really discuss that. Normally that is a tactical thing. Remember that my political life did not begin on the 22nd July 2022. It's a big insult to me for anybody who suggests that. I think I've made my contribution in fighting for the first transition. Even the party I lead, there are many who specialize in ridiculing the Democratic Party, but we are the ones who led the first transition from the movement system to the multi-party system. The other transition from President Museveni to another person is still a work in progress, but at least we achieved the first one. And there are many in this room here who resisted that effort we were making. They are now, of course, sick and tired of the NRM and so on, but it is our very own Honorable Zachary Olum and Dr. Semogere who went to court and fought for the first transition from the monolithic so-called partyless system to the multi-party system. So, if I don't believe in an idea, I would disown it. All these ideas I'm talking about, I believe in them. That we really need all the avenues for a free and fair election. Now, it is not actually the laws, it is the abuse of power which actually distorts the elections. And the elephant in the room is really the role of the military. Because rigging can only happen in a climate of fear. When somebody wants to take power by changing results. It happened in 1980. The UPCs will disagree, but I asked Dr. Semogere before he died, what makes you feel sure that DP actually won the 1980 elections? And he told me that he got a call from the Secretary of the Electoral Commission, Vincent Sekono, who congratulated him in Luganda, and he said, Yoga Yoga Sebo, which means big congratulations to you. And he knew that the Democratic Party was going to take power. In fact, to show that Vincent Sekono now had become a threat to the interests of those with power, he had to go into exile. So, I don't think our discussion should really be so much about the law, but changing the political culture, making sure that the army hovers above the political contest. Remember, 1973, Idi Amin started the lumpenization of the army. He called 7,000 jobless people to City Square and proclaimed the vision of liberating Africa by attacking Israel and attacking South Africa. So these people actually thought they now had a cause. Many of them could not even point Israel on the map. Many of them could not even point South Africa on the map. So these jobless people. So in the same way, the UPDF needs to be protected from creeping lumpenization, because there are some officers who will not give certain orders. There are some people in our army who will not do certain things. So there is also need to start naming and shaming those, thugs in uniform. Let me put it plainly. And I'm choosing my words very carefully. Because Uganda has paid a price, and the NRM rolled that back, by the way, in '86. I can tell you, when the UNLA took over power in '85, they came to our home. We are Acholis. We thought this was an Acholi government. They robbed us. Yes. And when my brother tried to speak Acholi to one of them, he received a slap. On the contrary, when the NRA came to our home in Jinja, Lubogo Road, they were very friendly and nice, and they didn't speak our language. So there's a kind of reversal about the character of the security forces, and that is a key safeguard to a free and fair election, not necessarily the law. Okay. The laws in Uganda, as Professor Lumumba said, are innocent.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Let's move to our next panelist, Professor Julius Kiza. You're welcome. Good to have you. Professor will be talking about the state of multi-party democracy in Uganda. Professor, before we go into the Q&A, I'd just like you to just briefly comment about this theme, and then we proceed with the questions.
The theme of state and multi-party democracy, my question is, what's the question?
Could you just give us an overview? Let's just give us an overview of the state of multi-party democracy in Uganda.
Okay. Thank you. Let me frame my own question. I've been permitted to frame my own question. Why should I care, and why would I invite you to care about the state of multi-party democracy today? I'm framing my own, since you permitted me. I care for several reasons. Number one, there is this persistent disconnect between form and substance, between what's official and what's real, between what the law says and what the practice is. And that bridge has got to be bridged. We've got to narrow the bridge and ensure that if it's not enough to have good laws, we want to see the practice. So that's one of the issues I would focus on. Number two, there is this great tendency for power holders to continue behaving like monarchies, even when they are presiding over Republican political dispensations. So you get somebody supposedly going through an election, supposedly presiding over a republic, but they continue to behave like the monarch with unlimited powers. And I think that's something we also have to look at. The commercialization of politics has already been commented upon. I only wish to add that money talks. And when money talks, truth is silenced. So we cannot continue to have meaningful democracy defined as the primacy of the citizen, where money is inducing political behavior. When money induces political behavior, it means votes don't matter. The citizens don't count. It is the candidate who chooses their voters. And I think that makes us very important. But I wish to quickly add that a lot of this conversation happening among the children of the rich, who are well represented here, is a conversation that is not factoring into the equation the primary concerns of the ordinary citizen. We are looking at the presence or absence of multi-party democracy, but we are not asking the fundamentals. What do the people we allege to be representing actually want? It is not the name. The people I know in this country, in East Africa, in Africa, are interested in quality education. Are they getting quality education? Pre-primary. No single government pre-primary school in this country, when I last checked, midnight last night. Primary education. Yes, we are having increased access, which is good, but the quality is embarrassing. It is not the quality we need in the 21st century. How about post-primary? How about university? We are having some people, and I teach at Makerere University, some of our learners in huge classes are learning via eavesdropping, via rumors. Some can't fit in the lecture spaces. So how are we defining our priorities to ensure we deliver a quality education to our citizens for the 21st century digital economy? The next question related to that is the issue of why there is no conversation among the people who are here regarding the skilling of our people. Recently, and that was 2 days ago, somebody shared a joke. They took Kenyan, and you know Kenyan because Kenya has expertise in TVET, business, technical, vocational education, and training. They took them for a show in France. And whereas the children from Korea, from China, from Singapore, were showing artificial intelligence, they were showing robotics engineering and 3D printing, the things to do with the Internet of Things generation, the Kenyans were showing Juakali brick-making tools. I said, thank God, Ugandans were not sent. Perhaps we would have behaved worse. So in other words, you and I must ask the question, why do you discuss multi-party democracy and have no interest in whether our duty bearers are skilling our citizens and preparing them for the 21st century? Next, how about this question of decent jobs? We read these things in the literature on the International Labour Organization. Decent jobs. Here, what is the status, sir? Your Excellency. His Excellency is my former guild president. So for me, his most important contribution to my life is when we fought cost sharing at Makerere. So I still think Chairman Mao is the guild president because he led us in that successful struggle. But what are we doing about this with your knowledge of the law? What are we doing about decent work for our citizens when minimum legislation is a problem? What are we doing? We don't even inspect. It is easy for the state in Africa to send spies to find out who is saying what in Sheraton. More difficult to find out which employer is abusing the rights of our citizens. Why are we sleeping on the job? Why are we not helping our citizens get decent jobs, rewarding jobs, in conditions of work? I mean, we have some of these sugar factories around here. It's very embarrassing. Let me quickly add the issue of infrastructure. And I'm told the big man was annoyed with me because I teach political economy of development, but I put a topic on the question of the standard gauge railway line. Why is Kenya succeeding? And why is Tanzania succeeding in building a standard gauge railway line, and Uganda is failing? I made this, the big man. I won't say the... Okay, okay. Now I understand why Mr. Tomshave is confused. I put this topic on my course outline and made it compulsory for my students of global political economy. And guess what? Some of them are eyes and ears of the state. So they reported me that I'm giving them an assignment which is saying, why is Kenya succeeding? And Tanzania is succeeding in building a standard gauge railway line. Uganda is failing. So of course they went and did research and they discover the fundamental constraint is political. Because we are all going to the Exim Bank. We are all having economies. Why is it that here, the economics which were preached by a consultant from Canada was that the standard gauge railway line does not make economic sense. Revive the old colonial gauge. That is foolishness of the academy. Because the academy is teaching economics, which does not work for poor countries. So I was very brutally honest, Muchiga style. And I'm told now there is money for the standard gauge railway line. At least we are waking up. But why don't we pick interest in infrastructure which unlocks? Why do we believe in the border economy? Why? Your Excellency, the Honorable. Excellency, the Guild President. Honorable, the Minister. Why is our wonderful cabinet glorifying a border economy with all the risks to our citizens? Why wouldn't we have factories to absorb these youth so they get off the roads? Why do we build narrow roads? I am getting worried about the elites in government. The president recently was lamenting to citizens on the Uganda Coffee Development Authority and why it should go back to the mother ministry. My boss, former Chancellor of Makerere, Professor Suruma, was reporting the government to citizens, defending Uganda Coffee Development Authority. We are seeing the Speaker of Parliament reporting the government to us that I want term limits. But why are you not doing it? And Honorable is doing the same thing. Why are we having duty bearers who are lamenting instead of doing the right thing? For me, these issues concern me, not just the conversation on multi-party democracy. Because multi-party democracy is a form. To what purpose? To what end? Why wouldn't we ask the question now that you are in office, whether we voted you or not, whether you stole elections or not? That is secondary. But why are you not using your space in public office and our resources to do the right thing? These are things which are missing in the conversation. And of course, finally, the gender agenda. Are we doing enough to ensure that the largest proportion of our population is attaining the tools, the empowerment, the capabilities that they need for the digital generation? Or are we reducing the gender agenda to rewarding the elitist women, like my sister, Honorable Kiza? These already empowered women are the ones we are looking out for. In other words, is the gender agenda captured by the elites? Does it continue to serve the interests of the girl child who is dropping out of school, 67% of our girls? Is this gender agenda speaking the voice of the girl child who is lacking sanitary towels? Is this gender agenda speaking the voice of the girl child and the boy child in our institutions of learning who are going hungry, malnourished, and some are fainting in our classes in front of poorly paid teachers who cannot offer more than a miserable meal for a day? Why are we not feeding our children? These things are not being factored into the conversation. And I would invite us to repent and put these things in the conversation on multi-party democracy.
Thank you very much, Professor. So I'll follow up with a question. I mean, you've spoken you've touched on a range of issues, but in particular, I'd like us to talk about the state of our political parties, especially the opposition parties. And when you look at the fragmentation or the polarization within, clearly it is evident that our political parties are being demobilized. But what then is the broader impact of this on political pluralism?
Professor Lumumba has already made it clear. When you have a country that is governed by those who are called liberators, genuinely, or through what the Russian military doctrine calls maskrovika. Maskrovika means masquerading. They put on a facade of a liberator when they are pursuing selfish interests. So whether these liberators are genuine or just practicing maskrovika, liberators have one disease. They have a sense of entitlement to rule or misrule. So if you have a liberator still holding in office 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and sometimes more than that, that liberator thinks that they are entitled to rule you, even when the evidence on the ground shows that they should have left office. So that is one of the key factors where the conversation must be. How can we negotiate liberators, whether they are genuine or masquerading? How can we negotiate them out of office? The DP approach does not seem to be working. I read the agreement they signed. That agreement, the wishful thinking that the old man will hand over power peacefully, that is apolitical. I don't think it's going to happen. But the point is, how do we strengthen the alternative sources to challenge the people holding power? And that's why I'm inviting us to appreciate and amplify what the Honorable has said. We need a citizenry that's educated. And that must be quality education. Not the Changwanzi, which is pretending to be patriotic only in labels. The patriotic education must be about loving your country beyond self. It is not about loving an individual or loving a regime. Patriotism is about loving the country beyond self. So are we having that education, that program, which equips the citizens to know that power lies with the people under Article 1 of the Constitution? The Kenyan Constitution has the same story. Power to the people. The Tanzanian Constitution, the same thing. Power lies with the people. In other words, are we educating our citizens to know that power is with the citizens, citizen agency, and that what the Swahili say, asiye kuwepo na lake halipo, are citizens exercising their agency, that you cannot pretend that your share will be guaranteed when you are silent. But I hasten to add that if our citizens, 68% are still rural dwellers, and the majority of these are peasants, they grow crops and wait for God, the heavenly angels, to send water to irrigate the crops. And they go on their knees and pray to the gods underground to supply soil fertility. Our peasants are fighting pests and diseases using prayers, not science. Now, this kind of peasantry needs liberation through technology. But are we going to solve that if we use a water bottle to demonstrate how to irrigate? Katika karne ya 21, mnasema tuendelee na teknolojia zamani. Huu ni ujinga.
Thank you very much, Professor Julius. And I think my role stops here. I'll invite my colleague Oscar to come and continue with Mr. Godba and Dr. Miriam Matembe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Judith deserves a huge, huge hand clap for this moderation. Sometimes moderating Honorable Mao and Professor Kiza can be a very tough job. And three people on prayer. Professor Lumumba said, so long as we just continue to pray and nothing changes. Now Professor Kiza is saying, so long as we pray for water, then we pray for fertilizer. So I don't know. And it seems like Honorable Mao is also praying for the digital voting. So prayers will continue. Now I'd like us to go to Dr. Miriam Matembe. And when you talked about education, seeing you're a professor, both Dr. Miriam Matembe and I got very annoyed. You know, when you are talking about those girls not in school, the World Bank has given a model that if they are in school and complete S4, you can improve food security. But Dr. Matembe is a retired politician and a well-known advocate for gender equality and women's empowerment. Before retiring from elective politics, she served as the woman member of parliament for Mbara district from 1996 to 2006. 98 to 2003, she served as the Minister of Ethics and Integrity. She was also a member of the National Resistance Council representing Mbara district up to 1994. Prior to that, she was the state attorney in the Department of Public Prosecutions at the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Beyond, she has also written several books. I think she has one of them here. Let me read the things so that you're not marketing yourself. Is this the newest one? This is the latest. So it has a dramatic front page, as you can see. The struggle for freedom and democracy betrayed. Memoirs of Miriam Matembe as an insider in Museveni's government, written with Benjamin Mpaka. A hand clap is deserved. This is her latest book. Dr. Matembe, please take the podium. I don't know whether I should ask you questions or you will answer yours.
Yes, you will ask me questions if you want, but
I can ask you or you will answer yours.
yeah, before I go into this gender issue, please allow me to say something on this.
Should I ask anything or I allow her to answer?
Of course,
Just
I have
allow.
to say it,
I've
whether you
allowed.
allow or not. We are here on constitutionalism and the constitutional governance. That is the debate. And whatever you were bringing in, you say, why not this, why not this? All those are affected by governance. All the things you are saying, they are under governance. And governance is within constitutional, governing according to the constitution that you set yourselves to. So why I thought these people put me on gender, that subject should have been given to Winnie. She has participated in political parties, which I have not. And I thought you could give a better, can even comment and hand her a microphone, tell us the challenges they've been facing within political parties as women. But what I want to say, which I couldn't go without saying, I want to thank you, Sarah, for inviting me here. Because I stand here as a senior citizen here. My friend Lumumba, you know, all these series you are talking. I think I stand here as a unique person here by the grace of God, who was a member of the Uganda Constitutional Commission, 21-member commission, which made the draft constitution. As a member of the Constituent Assembly, which discussed that constitution and eventually passed it. And again, as a member of the Legal and Drafting Committee. And all these committees, the one was chaired by Justice Odochi, the other one was chaired by, of course, the late James Wapakablo, distinguished, knowledgeable, and all those great people. And then the Legal and Drafting Committee, which put the final stamp on this constitution that was eventually promulgated. I was there watching everything to do with everything and making sure that gender equality is, of course, embedded there. And that was chaired by Justice Kanyihamba. So you can see I stand here when you are talking of constitution and constitutionalism in this country. I stand here as a person, you know, the lawyers say, what could have been the intention of those writing? Hey, for me, I know all the intentions on the commission, I know the intentions on the CA, the intentions, so they are within me and I know them. So when you see Matembe talk the way she talks, when you see, because she knows what was meant to be. Remember, you know, this was the first time Ugandans, you were talking of colonial whatever. But in 1980, from 1995, when Museveni took over. Now we became Ugandans. And we said we must build Uganda ourselves. This constitution you see, which has been murdered, it is now in intensive care. That's where she wants to redeem it from, I don't know. But it was made by the people of Ugandans. Ugandans themselves made this constitution, I'm telling you. And whatever we put there, even those who challenge us, we say we gave Museveni too much power. That we never gave that man power to act alone. Mao told us here that actually it is not the laws and the constitution is violated. It's not that the power, he has all those powers which he uses. We never gave him power to overrule the parliament and take over it. In fact, we gave the parliament power to impeach the president. I didn't get subject to talk about it, but for sure, when we are talking of constitutionalism and constitutional matters, I want to tell you, it is not even ignorance, it is not, when the president is taking over parliament and ordering all these people around, and they're educated, are they ignorant? Are they? So I will come to Mr. Rumumba, what he's telling us, Professor, of what to do. I was waiting for solution. Let me tell you, in Uganda here we have reached a stage when they laugh at us that we pray. Because God is in control. We have reached a stage where we can't do anything. So what would we do? We do something like I'm here talking. That is my purpose. Each of us find the purpose to do. But in the meantime, it is God who will be our Redeemer. Because I want to tell you that in Uganda here, the article says, sovereignty of Ugandans. All power belongs to Ugandans. And they said they will exercise this power in accordance with their will and consent through electing their what? Their representatives. That's what it says, that we choose how to be governed. And we chose. I'm telling you, we chose, and we put it in that constitution. And when it was passed, everybody said, wow, a wonderful constitution. But in practical terms in Uganda, what happens? All power belongs, I'm not saying even to the government. All power belongs to Mr. Museveni, who exercises it through militarization, coercion, intimidation, and massive corruption. That's what happens in this country. That's where we are. And in accordance with, my prayer comes in now, with 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 5, where Paul says, talks of having a form of godliness, but denying its power. Amen. In Uganda, we have a form of national constitution, but we deny its power. The power of the constitution is within its implementation. But here in Uganda, honestly, when you read those provisions, I have the original copy. When you look at it and see how wonderful that constitution was made, really. When you look, for instance, of human rights, these people who they band together, you talk of women. Women can't go to the street, they strip them naked. How could they strip women there in parliament this time when they were dealing with coffee? Can you imagine? I saw this police coming and picking this honorable. She was seated there. They came and pick and take out and from the parliament, which is a representative of the people. You people. Power without form of constitution, with no constitutionalism at all. It is so sad. Parliament, which is expected to be representing us, saying all that we need to be commanded, and you Ugandans, when President Museveni was saying, anybody who will oppose me will see fire, and you waited and you saw the fire. Didn't you see the fire? Now, where are we? What are you talking about? What does talking about these things mean to us? What does it mean to us? That is the question. I'm telling you the truth. You have talked to us here. You are giving us suggestion. Please, mobilization of the people, educate the people. Sir, when all the civic societies are closed and shut down, who goes to explain to the people? In this country of ours, Uganda here, the government wants to rule over ignorant and poor people. Clear, it is its policy. And central to their leading is not to serve Ugandans. No, central to holding the power for self, for the family, for the clan. This is what I'm telling you. And I think the biggest problem in African leadership is self-centeredness. We must leave the colonialists alone there. They went, we are here. Why do you look at ourselves? As long as we are driven by self and power, we are reaching nowhere. Because leadership is about others. Leadership is never about yourself. But in Africa, what drives it to leadership is our self-centeredness. We want to get power and use it for our own self-interest, for our clan, for our children, for our people. So we have got to reflect on our, when Trump is abusing us at times, I say the guy is right. He's right. What's wrong with us? What's wrong with us? So whether you recommend education or what, I'm telling you, Africans have got to rise up and say, no, enough is enough, and have a transformation of our mind. We've suffered enough. When I meet Uganda, I say, what can you do? What can you do? What can you do? Why am I never shot dead when I stand up and speak? Very good. And therefore, as I conclude on this statement, King David knew that God had made him a king, crowned him a king of Israel for the sake of his people, Israel. Until Africans know that leadership is about serving God's people, we are going nowhere. Now let me conclude by making a statement on women. Of course, let me tell you. And
let me ask the question now on women.
You
Since you are going,
okay,
then you can fit in. I've found an angle where I can ask a question.
Okay, you ask it now.
So, collective bargaining, power or not, what can women do?
Women here in Uganda.
Yes.
I wish they could behave like the women in South Africa when during that racism they rose up, they were 2,000, were they 200 women and went and bombarded. Yesterday we were celebrating them. The women of Liberia, they got up and said, no, enough is enough. And they received whatever their independence and got the first prime minister of the nation. Now, in Uganda here, you ask me a question.
We have a prime minister, vice president.
Now, let me tell you, you are taking me back in those things. Let me tell you, since Professor Mumba is here, I want to tell you, and I always stand up and thank President Museveni. I never forgive to give credit where it is due. And you know, in 1980, late 80s, from that time, the women in Africa have not been the same. Because before then, we were nowhere. We were not in public space at all. In Uganda, in fact, the situation of ours was worse. Because the truth is that we got onto the public platform when NRM arrived here, bringing a conducive environment for women to participate in governance and public sphere. That one we must give credit. Because we had struggled and nothing was happening. In fact, I remember when Rutua Okero took over and we formed ACFORD, we were going to demonstrate like I'm telling you, get out and do something. And they went and planned that when we go to the city square to demonstrate, they will come and rape us. They were ready to rape us, but somebody gave us information, so we never went to demonstrate. But we went there to walk in the shops to see whether it was true. And we found the army had been put at the city square, so we are saved. So when NRM came and said, women, where are you? You women, you should at least give credit for that. Whichever part in which you are, you should give credit for that. It said, women, where are you? Come and embrace the political space. And I can assure you, we embraced it who were going there to serve. And that's why we have this wonderful gender responsive constitution. We embraced the political space. All of you know what we did. But down the road, because we are following 10-point program officially, but behind the scenes, in the hearts of the president and his people, they had a different program. So when that different program came onto the public platform, the women now are just being used to promote the evil and the wrong that is happening in this country. And you remember I used to shout out loud, President is deceiving us. Look at the whole executive. That is the last year, the other year before this election, this new parliament. Because they were five president, vice president, first prime minister, whatever. And I say he's lying us. We are nowhere. No vice president, no nothing, no chief justice. I was shouting. So when elections came last time, I think he wanted to silence me. He picked vice president, a woman, prime minister, a woman, first deputy prime minister, third deputy prime minister, speaker, the whole of those five, they are now women. What does it mean to us as women or a nation when you put women in power without power? Women in power without power are better not to be there. Because when you put women in power without power, it means you have silenced the whole of Uganda women's movement. Now, we were silenced because what do you want? Women are there. Women are there. What is the problem? But women in power without power, they are on the table as part of the menu, not at the table as part of decision making. That's where they are. Whether in political parties, whether in NUPU, whether in whichever parties now I'm delivering what I was asked to give. In whichever party it is, there is no NUPU. I don't know about you, Auntie. I don't know, but what I know, even with the DP here, I have never had women who are the leaders there. There is gates where they are closed. And the problems, women don't have finances, women are sexually abused, you don't know, during campaigns. Can you imagine? Can you believe this? I train women in politics, but the challenge they tell us, sexually abused. Even the young boy whom you decide, please help me to be my agent. Hey, when are we going to do? Even everybody. Today it is so bad. That is a very big challenge to women to enter politics, which we never saw, which we never experienced. The cost of elections, which we never experienced in our time. I was in politics for good 20 years. I never bought anybody. I never paid any money, only for agents where you go to facilitation. I never did all this. Nobody asked to sleep with me. Maybe in parliament they see these men, when they see you, for them, instead of looking at the head, they are looking down. But we had to say no. That one you can fight it. That one you can fight it because they are not your bosses. But now in elections, the chairman, the electoral commission is servants there. Because of corruption, women are suffering. Number 3. When there is no peaceful environment for women to participate, it is very difficult. Women withdraw. Women want peace. That's why the real women who would be representing us, the educated, the professional, the skilled, have
have withdrawn from politics, and it has been left for the fisher women. That's why President Museveni said, I appointed my fishermen and fisher women. But you know, remember I told him that when Jesus appointed fishermen, he had to die so that they may do the work. But for him, he appoints and then stays, so things cannot work. Have I answered your question?
You have.
So big challenges are there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Miriam Matembe. Dr. Miriam Matembe deserves a huge, huge hand clap. She set her own question and answered. Somewhere I fitted in one of mine. She has answered. Do you think she has answered? She deserves a huge, huge hand clap. We shall now have Mr. Godba Tumushabe. Mr. Godba Tumushabe is a lawyer, a policy analyst, and social entrepreneur. He is currently the Associate Director at Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, where he directs programs covering democracy, land, and climate governance, extractives, and inclusive development. He's been an activist for a while, and this is just a small snippet of who Godba is. So again, the same question. Should I bother to ask you anything, or you have your own question?
You'll ask at the end.
I'll ask at the end. Sawa.
Thanks very much, Oscar. Thank you, colleagues. Very delighted to be here. I was asked to talk specifically about constitutional amendments and their implications. Of course, it's a very hard task to talk after Honorable Miriam Matembe. Yeah, so I'll do my best. But just to add two things before I make my remarks. One is that Miriam talked about the women who led the charge in South Africa, in Liberia. In the contemporary world, the women led to the overthrow of al-Bashir in Sudan. You remember the women who put on white and just went and captured the headquarters of the military in Sudan, and that's what led to Bashir disappearing. So in other words, for me, what that demonstrated to me is that women have power, and in the face of women's power, these authoritarian rulers just dissolve like a piece of cake. So that's the women. I think I really agree with her. Secondly, the point, Professor Mumba, you need to help us. For how long is Africa going to complain about the colonial state? Because colonialism is a historical phenomenon. It happened. We can't change it. Slavery is a historical phenomenon. It happened. We can't change it. But for Uganda here, we've been independent for now almost 62 years. So if after 62 years we cannot change the state and bring the one we want, what are we supposed to do? Why are we supposed to gather in a conference like this and say our problem is that we have a colonial state? Maybe we should even stop discussing these things. Because my view was that the 1995 Constitution of Uganda was our attempt to dismantle the colonial state and construct our own state. Because as a people we came together and discussed and agreed on how we should be governed. Now, if we agreed to be governed as a colonial state, then we should make it work. We should not come back and say, you know, this is a colonial constitution. Because that means that we are the ones who are colonial, not the constitution. Yeah, so we need to really we need to liberate ourselves from finding excuses of why we can't move forward. So let me make very quick comments. I have been doing work with my colleagues at CCG, looking at the constitutional amendments. Sorry, media, the Constitution of Uganda of 1995 is no longer there. Yeah. And sorry, my brother, Honorable Mao, please don't bring constitutional amendments. You have nothing to amend. No, it's not at all. We are going to be publishing this work because it will show you that actually right now we have an entire new constitution, not the one of 1995, because everything has changed. A constitution must essentially pass about 6 tests for it to be called a constitution. A constitution is not just some document, because that's what Museveni and his people have tried to explain to us, that a constitution is like any other document. You can change it, and I think the people who normally talk about it, they also talk about context. So in other words, for us, the context requires us to be changing all the time. But the constitution must meet about 6 tests. One is durability. If you look at the preamble to the constitution, what the framers wrote was to promise ourselves that we are promulgating a durable constitution. Durable means that it is going to stay for a while. Number 2 is that it's popular. You are creating a popular instrument of authority. I remember one time when I went to South Africa to visit, we were doing some work on legal aid, and we were visiting offices of the legal aid board of South Africa. You could go in the rural areas in KwaZulu-Natal, and you find there some just junior officer, and every time you would talk, he would tell you, when we got a new constitution, you could feel it in their mental programming. Number 3 is that the constitution helps with the distribution of power. And I think Honorable Miriam alluded to that. Number 4 is that a constitution creates predictability. That there are fundamental principles, there are fundamental processes that are predictable. Number 5 is that the constitution is your shield as a citizen. That the constitution protects you from the excesses of state authority. In other words, the state, if it cannot respect the constitution, then you as a citizen, you are going to be the one to suffer. The constitution is my shield. For religious people like me and others, the Bible is the shield. Yeah? For the citizen, the constitution is the shield. Number 6 is that the constitution provides safeguards. What are those safeguards? When you go in that constitution, you can read a very big document like ours, but you are looking for what are the safeguards that have been put in place. So at the very basic level, every constitution, no matter where it is located, in what context, you are looking for those as the test to say whether this is a valid constitution or not. Now, I can talk for a long time about this, but I'm just going to summarize, just to explain these 6 principles. The first one is that the Ugandan constitution, the 1995 constitution, fails the durability test. Because the Ugandan constitution was amended by the president and the parliament only 256 days after it was enacted. 256 days. In other words, it did not even survive for a year. Of course, the tragedy is that people like Honorable Miri and Norbert Mao, I think, participated in the amendment. The first amendment to the Constitution was actually on the 5th of July, 1996, when Parliament voted to increase the number of cabinet ministers. So in other words, as Ugandans, we had said cabinet is one of those tools that is used by presidents to divert the constitutional process. So we had set a limit of 21 ministers and 21 other ministers. Before Museveni could appoint those ministers, he asked Parliament to increase the number. He increased the ministers by 4 and other ministers by 15. So that was the first decision. In fact, if you go back to the Hansards, the then Chotera MP Patrick Chigundu, RIP, he even asked, after the resolution had been passed, is this amendment, this resolution, is it for the 5 years or it is permanent. And the speaker then, the late Wapakaburo, basically said, no, we are doing for the 5 years, the next parliament will make its own decision. Now, the mere fact that it has become permanent, the numbers have become permanent, and the increase has been done every year, means that that is the first amendment to the Constitution. So a Constitution that does not survive its first anniversary fails the durability test. Number 2 is the popular. The popular test. Is this a popular Constitution? Remember, a couple of people have said this, that the 1995 Constitution is a Constitution that tries to distribute power. And the main power rests with the citizens. If you go back to your Article 1, is about power belongs to the people. Article 2, the supremacy of the Constitution. The supremacy of the Constitution means that everybody is under the Constitution. Number 3 is about the defense of the Constitution. And number 4 is about the promotion of public awareness of the Constitution. And I actually think that, Chairman, I don't think that the people you are working with, they don't believe in the Constitution. They don't, unfortunately. Because when you go back, you will see the first amendments under Article 4, the state was charged with the responsibility. The framers charged the state the responsibility to make the Constitution popular by translating it in different languages, and secondly, by making sure that it is taught in education institutions and training institutions of the armed forces. That was the command of the Constitution. So the second major amendment, which came in 2005, they attempted to remove those two. Those requirements, if you go back to the amendment of 2005, they tried to remove them. They failed, but I think they removed them in 2015. Again, for someone like President Museveni who doesn't believe in the Constitution, I'm sure he knows that a people who are knowledgeable and who are knowledgeable about the Constitution, they can be a problem. Yeah, and so that's what has been happening. Number 3 is the question of distribution of power, the distribution of power test. So what you'll find interesting that the Constitution, and I think as Honorable Miria said, the Constitution actually distributes power according to the different arms of the state. So we have the power belongs to the people, that's citizen sovereignty. That's about distribution of power, citizen sovereignty. Chapter 5, as you recall, deals with the representation of the people. And then you have the executive power. You have the legislative power. You have the judicial power. So all this is properly distributed. The only problem is that when you look at all the amendments, one of the chapters that have been really completely mutilated are those that deal with the power of the citizens. Yeah, if you go back and look at chapter 5, representation of the people, that's the one that deals with the right to vote, the electoral commission, its functions, the demarcation of constituencies, and all the rest. So that is one of the chapters that have been completely decimated. And then the one dealing with the executive, where they have been mainly focusing on removing safeguards. And you know, one of the challenge, I think Ugandans were very, very dishonest people. Yeah, we are all dishonest to each other, but also to ourselves. Because you see, Chairman Mao is Minister of Justice. Yeah, he's the face of justice. But in Uganda, he's basically the face of injustice. In Uganda here, yeah. Because you see, he will come. You even had the deputy speaker coming and telling us what amendments should come. He's saying for him, he's for the restoration of term limits. You go back and look at all the MPs who voted to remove term limits. They are the ones who are going to be arguing about restoration. All of them. Because they know they are cheating. Yeah? They know they are cheating. They know that for you to bring age limit, to remove age limit, which was one of the safeguards, you needed to now spice it with restoration of term limits. You are basically spicing. But you see, Chairman, if you are Minister of Justice now in Uganda, and you know that Ugandans have been tried in the court martial, there are constitutional court rulings that have said trying civilians in the general court martial is unconstitutional. But you as Minister of Justice, you are as helpless as the people who are being tried. The Attorney General is basically talking and justifying why they can't take action. Then you basically have no power. We are being dishonest to ourselves. Yeah? And then from there you're going to say, I am working on constitutional amendments. Incidentally, let me also put it this way, that this country, the problem right now, we don't have a problem of electoral reforms. Our problem as a country is political. It is not electoral. Yeah? That is the problem must be approached from a political and constitutional perspective. The electoral is those are the procedures, electronic voting, counting votes. That's basically, those are footnotes. Yeah? The problem is where you can see, in the case of Kisoro there, you see people supporting a candidate, distributing money, and the candidate still remains in the race. There is no amount of electoral reform that will change that. Because that person, first of all, should have been in jail. The person, the candidate and his or her agents should have been in jail. The fact that we have a state that either is incapable or is an accomplice in this kind of criminality is the problem, not the law. I think the video was going on yesterday where a woman is confronting these security people, police and the military, that are carrying pre-ticked ballot papers. The only agency in this country that prints ballot papers is the Electoral Commission. So that means that the Electoral Commission is the one which provided those ballot papers. That's what it means. The fact that you can have that kind of situation and someone who is the chairman of the Electoral Commission and calls himself even a judge of the High Court and cannot even say, I am resigning if I cannot manage a simple by-election. That is the problem. That problem is not the law. So Ugandans, I hope that Ugandans won't be, we should not be misled. Sorry, Chairman, to disappoint you. There is no amount of electoral reforms that is going to change our situation, unfortunately. Yeah? Just two quick points and I end. You see, I've said the problem is political. So, when you are dealing with the problem of this country, you have to appreciate, first and foremost, that Museveni's mental programming is that he's a life president. You have to appreciate that. If you don't, all your prescriptions will just be dealing with the what do you call them? With the, like, consequences. You will be dealing with the peripheral issues. So I think, I agree with my chairman Mao here, that Uganda's, the movement to the future of this country can only be a negotiated solution. So in other words, it's a dialogue issue. So in other words, if Ugandans, if we are not able to force all these political actors to sit on the table and talk about the future, we are not going to deliver the future through elections. Because you need a negotiation that guarantees Museveni and his people some golden parachute for them to be able to feel comfortable that we can all move to the future together. So that's what I really, so even, so to build a culture of constitutionalism, you can't build it in this kind of environment. A culture of constitutionalism is built by men and women who are leaders, who respect their people, who want the best for their people. Yeah, they are the ones who will build. So that we have moved it. So finally, as I've said, the distribution of power. One of the biggest challenges we have is that the regime, I don't know if it's Thomas who said we should not call it chairman. No, these groups, if it is a junta, we need to call it a junta. It's okay, because that's what it is. By massaging it, it doesn't help. Yeah? If I run a political party and it is like a family party, we should call it a family party. Because if we assume that it is a political party and yet it is a family, then we are not dealing with the problem. Yeah? So the fact that the NRM regime has literally overthrown the judiciary is a fundamental problem that we have to deal with. Because you see, from the time of the attack by the Black Mamba Urban Squad on the High Court, and then the follow-up, because that I think was within a space of 1 year, that the courts were desecrated and they were disempowered. Serious people cannot expect to get justice from the courts here. Yeah? You just go there to pretend that something can happen. And that we have to be able to liberate. But you see, the fact that you have a government that can deploy armed people in parliament and they do the kinds of things. So this is the junta, because you see, like in this coffee deal, the coffee deal, these are security people. They are supposed to be uniformed. They are supposed to be disciplined. And then they are in parliament. They are saying, switch off the rigs. Aren't those by eye? Yeah? Because if you are professional and you are trained and you are, why would you want to move in darkness? Yeah. And you are just carrying women like luggage. And then we are supposed to now sit there and say we are discussing electoral reforms. What kind of madness is that? So we need to reframe our problem and be able to deal with it squarely, because the problem is a political problem, it's a constitutional problem. The rest of the things that are administrative and procedure can actually fall in place. Even this thing that is worrying about campaign finance, once you have the fundamentals in place and they are sorted, then you definitely the rest of the peripheral things should follow. But I think on that note, allow me to stop here. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you. Good, but before you go, I'm going to give Chairman Mao a note of response, because he seems like, but it goes against, okay, yes, but Godba, there are two instances in Uganda. There were those following on to Dr. Miriam Matembe. I remember the women of Amuria when they protested land issues. I think they stood. But didn't they succeed? And then there's the case of Mo Ibrahim. He made these offers to African leaders and others. So how far has that gone? All the questions I prepared for you were on amendments, and seeing that you have answered all of them, I will not dare bring up one.
So just two quick comments. I think that the one thing that we'll agree on is that fighting for democracy is a continuing struggle. And like Miria said, for President Museveni, I think we have to give him credit for the contribution he has made, both in this country but also on the continent. But I normally say President Museveni is a good leader past prime time. So he has done all his best. If to expect that he's going to do some more very good things and better things, no, that is really to expect too much from him. I even actually add that even each one of us in this room, if you have been in power for 40 years, the likelihood is that you are either going to be like Museveni or even worse. So in other words, this is not about Museveni. But I'm saying that to say that if you think of the women of Amur, these are continuing struggles. President Museveni has done two things. If you give him credit for all the things he has done, he has done two things that are very dangerous for this country. And I don't know how we'll overcome them. The first one is that he has demobilized institutions of state and institutions of citizenship. So in other words, the parliament, the judiciary, all these have been demobilized. They cannot function. They cannot provide you protection. They cannot plan for those kids that you are talking about. You know, guys, when you have a president who has presided over a country, signed the laws that set up these agencies, and he goes on public radio, on public TV, and he's calling people who have worked for this country day and night, he's calling them criminals, parasites, what? You have to be worried. Yeah. As a people, you have to be worried. Yeah? So that's one thing that he has done. But more so, he has been able to demobilize institutions of citizenship. Because as citizens, our power, our sovereignty is exercised collectively. So those citizens who organize, who are active in politics, they organize around political parties. Museveni is elected and he goes and delivers an address and says, I am going to finish all these political parties within 5 years. And you know those NRE people, they're even there clapping. Eh? Yeah, very, very interesting.
Okay, thank you. And Mo Ibrahim?
Sorry, I have to finish this point because it's important. Yeah? For the churches, Martin, for the churches, he has co-opted all of you. Not me. Okay. So, all these Karaji, he has co-opted them. You've seen them during COVID, they would go to State House and they sit there like little children, and he's there like the Grand Ayatollah preaching to them. And you can go to professional bodies. And you go to business associations. So he has done that. So the second problem, which we have to confront, to deal with, is that he has lowered, this regime has lowered the imagination of our people. The threshold levels of success have been lowered, have been put so low. Everybody keeps on adjusting towards the lowest common denominator, and then they pretend they are successful. Yeah. So when I have some little money, then I say, in most cases, I always tease the young people. When the guy finishes work and he goes to government and maybe sometimes gets some little money, Andrew Karamaj there, goes and buys a plot of 50 by 100 or 50 million, the man has succeeded. And then you ask yourself, is this country going?
Goes to TikTok.
So, finally, Mo Ibrahim. I think that the Mo Ibrahim formula cannot work in Africa until, the only way that can make something like that work is that the citizens have to take charge. Right now, Africans in our respective countries, we are not in charge. We don't have power. The fight here and elsewhere must be about how do we regain power, how do we liberate the state institutions from capture. I think, Piero, you'll probably agree with me that Kenya, you have tried. You really, for me, I give you a lot of credit. In spite of the challenges, the Kenyans tried to fight to protect the Kenyan institutions and the Kenyan constitution. And you can see this, the machinery is always trying to change things. But I think Kenya has tried, but Ugandans, I think because of our history of trauma, when the Matembes gave us the constitution, we congratulated ourselves. We went back to do our usual business, and the man and his people started rewriting the constitution until we have no more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Godba Tumshave deserves a huge, huge hand clap. Let's give him a hand clap. Thank you very much. He made all my questions on constitutional amendment redundant by saying it was amended in less than a year of existence. So we are going to have lunch. And the people that are standing in front of lunch are Honorable Minister Mao, Chairman, 5 minutes, and then Professor Lumumba, 5 minutes, and then we shall have the lunch. And after lunch, we are starving. And then you might even say we pray. And I wanted to tell you, Godba, that Pastor, Dr. Sempa, his Land Cruiser is old, so he's still okay. I know. Yeah. So, Chairman Mao, Honorable Minister.
Godba Mushabe was supposed to prove his case against me beyond reasonable doubt. I still insist I have no case to answer. But I'm pleased that what I did after negotiations with President Museveni, barely 2.5 years ago, appears to have done some tectonic shift in the language people use. Words like transition have now become common. A negotiated transition. It's because I live in the real world. Uganda is not Sweden and it is not Denmark. And I think, as Bob Marley said, check out the real situation. And you deal with the situation as it is. Some of us risked our lives to go to talk to Joseph Kony. We were not foolish. We knew that we could easily be captured and probably killed. But given the reality of the situation, the Ugandan state was not capable of solving the problem through military force alone. So we went and talked as a tribe, and we looked him in the eye. That was our reality. And the theorists may talk about not talking to terrorists, and so on, but that is for their PhD thesis and so on. We have nothing against them. For us, we wanted to go back to our villages and leave the IDP camps. So the Ugandans who are listening to us, they know the reality. They call this government a hybrid government. And I am the one who has posed the most difficult question publicly. And I said, what if the president does not wake up tomorrow? Are you going to call a seminar to advise the leaders? I think most of you would first of all find a place where you'll keep very quiet to monitor the situation. I know Sarah for sure will be somewhere on internet. So I think let us not be pretending here. Let us face the actual reality of the country called Uganda. Fortunately, some of us have been on all sides. We were even one time thinking of picking up arms. But there is something called parity of esteem. If ever you are going to talk to somebody, you must restrain yourself. Even if I think really you are the biggest idiot in the world, I will not call you an idiot if I think you have something I need. So you must give somebody an incentive. I wish Professor Lumumba can tell us about Moi and his departure. It was not easy. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a snake coiled around your egg, the temptation to get a stick and beat it is very high. And it is the reasonable thing anyway. It is a natural instinct. But if you consulted the wise, they would say, well, why don't you get a rat to distract the snake? So I am hoping that, because there's nothing new that I have heard from Godba. This is the same thing Godba has been saying, year in, year out, reading from the book of Lamentations. Me, I want to read from the book of Revelations. Godba Tumushabe believes that President Museveni has a great future behind him. I am saying he could have a great future in front of him. If Ugandans, and especially those who care, personally, I want to be president of Uganda, but it's not the most important thing anymore. It's important, but not the most important. If I can add one brick to the building of a safe transition. Here is a woman of faith who has stopped believing in miracles even. You. So at least, I'm not the one, I'm saying at least believe. No, I'm not even saying I can substitute God, but I'm saying stop being a prophet of doom. You know, a real bishop once told me, forget about the Honorable Miriam Matembe and the other people, the prayer warriors. I'm talking about a real bishop who is immersed in the word. A bishop, I asked a bishop, does God answer prayer? Then he said yes. Then I asked him how. And he said in 4 ways. God can say yes, 1. God can say no, 2. God can say, here is something better than you have asked, 3. And then 4, God can say, just be still and wait and see what I'm going to do. But you don't believe. I am now challenging the believers to act like believers. Because if in every seminar you are saying this country is going to burn up, there is going to be chaos, there is going to be this, no wonder the youth are thinking that that is actually how change is going to come. So, we need a mind shift. Lastly, this constitution that we have is supposed to deliver 4 things. 1 is democracy. I don't want to go into the details. We have said it hasn't delivered it. So we must demand that it delivers it. Number 2, it must deliver a national economy where there's opportunity for all of us. Ugandans are saying the opportunities are lopsided. The gap between the haves and have-nots is very high. Number 3, the Constitution is supposed to offer peace and security. And the Ugandans are saying the security of the state seems to be the main interest of our government, rather than the security of the citizens. We must demand that there should be a focus on the security of citizens, not just the security of the state. Number 4 is the question of national unity. Right now, the unity of the country is being threatened because of certain political shifts. And because it's only a few years ago that the Honorable, Mr. Godba Tumushabe, maybe he will come back as Honorable, yes. Godba, only a few years ago, that's when he started calling this government a junta. So when did this government become a junta? It is about relationships. When a relationship sours between you, you see, a married man can call the mother of his children a prostitute after divorce. Yes. So I think really, let us confront these questions and realize that people change. The north, where I come from, Teso, Acholi, Lango, West Nile, we were the opposition. Now, because of a shift, people are saying, you have betrayed the struggle. But where were you when we were in the struggle to defeat the NRM? You see, when did you realize that the struggle was legitimate? So
Okay.
we
Thank you,
realized that now Buganda, which was the hotbed of NRM support, in 1996, they could not vote for Dr. Paul Kawanga Semogerere, who is not only a Muganda, but also a solid leader on his own right. They said, no, we cannot vote for you. We are happy at least that we can sleep soundly at night. So, if the Center for Constitutional Governance wants some suggestion from me on a way forward, put those of us who have been holding the microphone here in a room, and we really have some straight talk. Because I'm not going to sit here and I'm being held liable for things that have happened before you started calling this government a junta.
But we put you in a room a little while ago. You remember?
No,
A
this
room of
room,
four
this
people.
room will, this room
And in
will
that
come.
room, you sat there.
I think we must realize the limits of government.
Yeah.
No, government cannot solve every problem. We must realize the limits of government. But the government also has a lot of possibilities. I still believe very strongly that the fact that President Museveni is aware and now calls people Bazukulu. Why does he call the Ugandans Bazukulu? Because he has realized that his age has advanced.
Zejaja.
That
Thank you.
one is a very academic definition
Thank you.
of what he's doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
For us who are in the villages,
Yes.
we know that he has become keenly aware that he is in the evening of his life. And it is our duty to continue telling us what we expect of him. But if we sit and we say, we expect you to steal, we expect you to kill, we expect you to do this, he also has people who benefit from doing that.
Okay.
But we must hold him,
Thank you.
because to
Chairman Mao,
whom much is
we must-
given,
you are
much
stopping.
is expected.
It is you between lunch and let's have 5 minutes of Professor Lumumba.
I'll not take 5 minutes. First, let me point out that my paper was about constitutionalism in East Africa, and I touched on the continent of Africa. But I want to speak directly to Godberg. I'm speaking to you, please. Excuse me, I want to address you. You are a lawyer. And it pains me when you say that we can talk about legal issues without a historical context. There must be a historical context. The post-colonial African state is just 60 years. That is a very short time. And therefore, and indeed, the influence of the colonizers in Africa is still alive. That is why you have the IMF. That is why you have even this conference supported by GIZ and European Union. So historical context is very important. Number two, even when you are talking about the Ugandan constitution and durability, durability is not measured in 60 years. The American Constitution was promulgated in 1787. Within 4 years, there were 10 amendments in 1791. And there was a civil war to test that constitution. And there was the civil rights movement in 1963. And much more recently, Floyd Patterson. So durability is not something that you say because there has been an amendment after 4 months, therefore it is not durable. You talk about durability even after 100 years. Number three, there are words that you've bandied around. The word junta was used for the first time in 1622 with regard to rogue government in Spain and Portugal. And I don't think you have a junta in Uganda. notwithstanding the things that are happening. A junta was specific to the Portuguese and Spanish situation, and even when it has been nuanced by way of English, meaning adoption into English, we must be very careful, particularly as lawyers, when we use words such as junta. And I'm saying that because there are young legal minds here. You've also used the word regime. The word regime was first used in 1792 in France. And I want to remind you that when you talk about a regime, the context of it is very important. And lastly, I want to remind you of what John Henry Clark said, that when African countries regained their independence, none of them ever adopted a system that could be described as uniquely African, and all of them will never succeed. That is why we are struggling. Even what you call the Ugandan Constitution of 1995, these are constitutions that are modeled after European constitutions. They are modeled in that way. That is why you have the judiciary. And I invite you to read a book which has been written by Asmaram Legese on the Oromo democracy and the Gada system. When you read that, you'll see an attempt at talking about a system that is uniquely African, the Gada system. I also invite you to read a book which is Orunmila and Socrates about Yoruba governance systems. And I'm one who, as I become older, when I listen to you, you are demanding immediate change. Can you offer immediate change, which is removing this administration by force? Can you? You can't. So let us be measured in the manner in which we talk about things. And I referred you to the darkness at noon. In times of political immaturity of the masses, you do not appeal to their higher judgment. You must be measured in what you propose or take power by a coup d'etat. Do you have the means to take power by a coup d'etat? So that when we are talking about education, you are saying that that is not the wise thing to do? I'm suggesting that we must not allow our anger to stand in the way of our reasoning and tasting the coffee. What Norbert Mao talks, the reality of the moment is that the talking you see us doing here, and those of us who are Christians, let me come to you. Christianity is a 2,000-year-old religion. And I want to remind you, and I want to refer you to an incident, 3 verses in the Bible, then I stop. Number 1, John the Baptist is the one who baptized Christ. And when he was baptizing Christ, the Holy Spirit came in the form of a dove and said, "This is my son in whom I am well pleased." When he is in prison about to die, he's the same John that sends 2 of his disciples to Christ to go and ask him, "Are you the one, or we should wait for another?" And what does Christ say? He says, "Go and tell him that the blind are seeing, the deaf are hearing, the lepers are being healed, and the gospels are being preached." And he dies. He's killed. Number 2 of the verses, Matthew 24:24. "In the last day there shall be many Christs, and they shall do wonders, and they shall mislead even the very elect, if it were possible." The last one is Paul's second letter to Timothy at chapter 3. In the last day there will be a form of Christianity where people will be lovers of themselves. They will be gossipers, and they will thrive and confuse many, just as Jannes and Jambres confronted Moses in the desert. Let us be measured. That is, let us be measured. And when you talk about Africa, there are struggles, and these conversations are critical. These conversations are critical because they are building block by block. And I'm suggesting to you, there is a Kiswahili saying which says, "Jishinde ushinde." Conquer yourself And let us not, and this is what I want to conclude with, and as I grow older, there is sometimes the assumption when we are talking from podia, we speak ex cathedra, and we are speaking as if we have the monopoly of knowledge and wisdom. We do not have. Socrates, when he was asked who is the wisest man, why was he declared the wisest man? Because he declared the only thing that he knew was that he knew nothing. And this country called Uganda, you have a duty to preserve it for this generation and generation yet to be born. You who is here, you will be dead in 40 years' time, maximum. Or if you are not dead, you'll be old and not useful. And I am telling you and others who think that you can have these microwave solutions, which you can have instant coffee solutions, the world does not work that way. Mandela was in prison for 27 years. Robert Sobukwe died. And even the thing that you are citing here and we are citing here, Sharpeville in 1961, Soweto in 1976, Mandela met the apartheid regime 48 times before he was released. So one can go on, but I'm suggesting to us, particularly we who are academics, we must be measured because we are dealing with younger minds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. No. We are going
Miriam is asking me, she is retired. Have you solved all of Uganda's problems? Now that you retire? You've handed over the baton to another generation. You've played your part. That is the only thing you could do. Play your part and hand over the baton. To cast aspersions at people as if you are God's solution to Ugandan's problem and you are the monopolizer of knowledge is not right. You have played your part. History will remember you for that. Thank you.
lunch. Thank you very much, Professor Lumumba. So, thank you, our panelists. We are going to stop for lunch and get energized. Then when we come back after lunch, the panelists will return to the chairs and you shall ask them the questions you've been saving to ask them. I have been told by management, ladies and gentlemen, lawyers, the lawyers in this corner, matters of lunch are very important. Matters of lunch are very important. So we go to Paradise Restaurant and let's make an effort to come back by 2:30, 2:35. We make a start. The afternoon we are going to ask the panel questions.